Good evening.
Good evening.
First of all, I want to tell you, my house looks very naked and empty tonight. Almost all of these paintings hang in my house. And this is not going to be just about Franck Bowers, Franck Taylor Bowers. It's actually reminiscing about the Bowers family completely. And I'm glad you guys are here who bought their house. How many years ago?
Almost 25.
Yeah. I didn't remember. I was looking this afternoon. I believe it was 2004 that the paintings were all auctioned off, along with everything else. So, first of all, I want to talk about Janet. How many of you remember or knew Janet? How many didn't? That would even be more fun. Okay.
Oh.
She was a wonderful character, yes? And a dear friend who I adored, and who, this is a prop for tonight, but it's also libation for whoever would like some. I cannot tell you how much scotch Janet and I consumed together at Gourmet Club. So, there are glasses here. You are more than welcome to share this. I promise I will not drink the whole thing while I'm doing this because the stories would change. They might be made up anyway. And this actually is not scotch. This is American honey whiskey. So don't be surprised when you taste it. But really, there are glasses right behind Carol. And you may pass them around. You may pass the decanter around. And I'm sorry I didn't bring enough crystal glasses for everybody. But Janet taught me years ago, scotch always tastes better in crystal than it does in paper or in plastic. All right, we used to ask about Janet. Who remembers Clem and Janet Sr., Dr. and Mrs. Bowers? 1, 2, 3.
I might, but I don't know for sure.
First of all, this portrait, which was done by Frank, was or is of Dr. Clement Bowers at about age 6, somewhere around 1902, I believe it was.
He certainly changed.
Yes, he did. Now, Diane, my sister Diane and I, our favorite memory, and our father's memory also, was that Dr. Bowers, who was a doctor of botany, he graduated from Cornell. He was a professor emeritus there. Clem's brother is who was the artist that did all of these paintings. And we're going to go back a generation, 2 generations before that. Let me get to my phone. As a kid, the most impressive gravestone down in Maine Cemetery is the Bowers stone. It's the biggest stone that's there. It's on the corner. And it has, let me blow this up so I can read it. Gardner Sewin Bowers, who was Lamont's father. And Phil, tell me how you say her name again? Asha Taylor Bowers. That was his wife. They had, I believe, 8 children, including Lamont, who is Frank and Clem's father, who owned he was he was partners with John D. Rockefeller, and that's where the money came from. Many different investments. They lived on Main Street in Binghamton. If I remember correctly, it was a 42-room mansion, which is unfortunately no longer there. If you go to Robertson, which I did contact them, and I tried to borrow some of Franck's paintings that are there, but they do not let them out of museums. So I would suggest that if you have not been there lately, you need to go and see the Bowers exhibits. The parlor in the mansion is from their living room. It is a gold leaf Louis the 16th, 18th, 20th, I don't know, covered in blue brocade and gold leaf. And it is gaudy and wonderful, and it fits that mansion. It looks like it should always have been there. Something that I just read while I was doing research for today, Franck was asked by Alonzo, and I believe it's Elizabeth Robertson, to be on the board for the museum. Before Franck actually died, before Alonzo did. So Clement replaced him on the board for the museum. And I just learned that today. A little side note about the Robertson or Robertson. We've all heard it both ways. I was just told, because I do volunteer work there at Christmas time especially, and they, the docent said that the name was really Robertson. However, Mrs. Robertson thought that was crass because they were in business and she didn't want to be accused of robbing things. So she is who cultivated the Robertson, which does sound a little bit more snooty, doesn't it? So, and that is a story that I was told by someone at Robertson or Robertson. But the second floor, as you go up the main staircase, the first bedroom to the right, yes, first bedroom, that was Alonzo's bedroom, and that's where the Bowers, I'm not going to say the entire gallery because it goes on for 3 more rooms. The large oil paintings by Franck, which are similar to this one here, are hung down the hallway and into the next bedroom. If you guys would like to pass this around, you can. I have 2 copies, so I'm going to use it as a cheat sheet for part of it. Lamont, who is would be Janet's grandfather, he's who made the fortune. He apparently was very well connected, very industrious, but he did not like the fact that Franck wanted to study art. So he kept him busy in the family business and the family farm, which I guess was quite a large farm in Binghamton. There are references in Cooking Up the Creek. There are a few pictures, and if you haven't got a copy of this, it is a wonderful cookbook that Janet put together 30 years ago at least. And there are pictures in here that Franck did. Franck was not only an artist, but he was also a very gifted photographer. And a few of the pictures, I'll tell you some of the stories of them and how they were done. Lamont and Elizabeth, Janet's grandparents, are the ones that had the 40-plus room mansion in Binghamton, and where the gold parlor set came from. And how many of you were at the Bowers auction the first time? 1, 2, 3. This would have been when Jan and Larry first moved back. One of my favorite memories as a little kid was going there with my mom, and there was so much stuff So many things, because they had taken that 42-room mansion and brought a lot of it to the house up here, which is a good size house. But as a little kid, I remember Mom telling me not to touch things, which we were never told not to touch things. Yes? We handled everything. But in the middle of the living room, they had a round sofa like you would have found in a hotel with a tree up the middle.
Yeah.
And as a little kid, walking through that big living room, which is the one on this side, with the bay window, you had to walk around it just to get through. It was so much stuff. A couple of cool things about the Clement and Janet Sr., which is Janet's mother. Janet Sr. and our grandmother, Molly Streeter Clark, used to go to Antique Society together and to auctions together. And I wasn't going to bring this, but Sandy said, I love the story, you need to bring it. So the basket of flowers, which were on the altar at church yesterday for Easter, the basket my grandmother bought when she was with Mrs. Bowers at an auction in Binghamton at the home of Mr. and Mrs. Fowler of Fowler, Dick and Walker.
Wow.
So that's, did I leave anything out, Sandy, on it?
I know.
We talked about it yesterday.
I know.
It was one of the first things that I asked for after my mom died, which can you believe is almost 20 years already. Amazing. So anyway, our family was good friends, my grandparents especially, with Clement and Janet Sr. And as Vivian said, Janet Jr. Unfortunately did not have a lot of friends here in town and didn't come back until 77, 78. I don't think they were here for the 70, maybe they were for the 73. They were. Thanks,
They were
Phil.
here for the celebration.
For the 73 celebration, the 125th.
The 125th, and that one would have been 72.
73, yep.
Yeah.
So they had a huge auction so you could walk through the house. And Janet told me years later there were only 2 pieces of furniture that she sold at that auction that she regretted selling. Rick and Gloria Comstock bought one, which was a butler's desk, which ended up in a jewelry store in Boston. And I bought a bookcase that covers the entire wall of my living room. That there's actually 3 pieces to that collection. I have 2 of them. The second one, Jan and I were sitting next to each other at Gourmet Club. Might have been. And I had told her years before, because I knew that that was part of the 3-piece collection, that I wanted that. And the 3rd piece is in Robertson. And she said, it's on loan. I will get it out and you can buy it also. Well, then at Gourmet Club one night, the curio cabinet that matches my bookcase, we're sitting next to each other, and she said, and I think that it was at the Rosek's house. And she said to someone else, I've sold the curio cabinet that is with all the inlay. And I said, what? I was not quiet. And she said, why? And I said, I reminded her. And I actually traded her a very expensive Christmas tree, artificial Christmas tree, for the curio cabinet. So she did let me have it. 3rd piece is still in Robertson. She died before she got it out. So when they came back, for any of you that were in the house here, a lot of the chandeliers, which were very large, massive from the house in Binghamton, they took the larger ones out from up here and exchanged them with smaller ones that were in Robertson. So Robertson has the larger ones. They all came out of the same mansion, but that was the story that Janet told me. Cool lady, eccentric lady, wonderful friend, and I miss her terribly. And I have to tell you, is it okay to say pissed? I have to. When she died, I was ticked off because she did not want to have any memorial service whatsoever. And none of us knew where she was buried. Because one night at Gourmet Club also, she sat beside me and she said, Yancey, when I die, do not let them plant me with my parents in Floral Park. She adamantly did not want to be in Floral Park. She was cremated, but none of us knew where she was interred or scattered. Alice Tartanian Hopkins was on the board at that time and was very close with Janet also. And one Sunday when I was bemoaning the fact that we had not been able to say goodbye to her properly, I said, can you tell me where Jan is scattered, buried, whatever? She said, I can't tell you. But where do you think? And I said, I hope she's in the flower garden, which was the paddock for the horses behind the house. And Alice just said, very good, turned around and walked away. So I found out in a roundabout back way. Let's talk about Frank now. Frank was the eldest son. There is a book going around, and Phil, is the book that you have from here, is that yours? That's yours. I've tried to accumulate enough books so that when I pass these paintings on to my kids, they will have, at least there will be 5 of them, so they each get a book. I tried to get enough books to go with each one of the paintings. I don't think that's going to happen. Franck, and it is Franck Taylor Bowers. Going back to, however you say her name, Asha, thank you. Gardner and Asha, which is Lamont's parents. Are you keeping this all on track? Right. Lamont was one of the 8 children and the father to Clem and Frank. Frank is the oldest. He was born in 1875, which would have been just 5 years older than our grandmother, almost within a month. He was born in July, I believe. And he only lived till 1932. If you get the opportunity to read this book, one of my copies is going around, and I think that we have one here in the museum. I'm going to read just a couple of paragraphs from the preface and then the bio. While creativity recognizes no geography, the opportunity to display works by an ancestral artist of its own community is always a source of pleasure and pride for an institution. This was written by Keith Martin, who was the director of Robertson at the time. Our retrospective exhibition of the works of Franck Taylor Bowers, Binghamtonian, an artist of an earlier generation, provides another benchmark in the sequence of cultural history which may well find interest beyond the confines of our own locality. And I will add in, it definitely does, Frank's daughter, Frank had one child, as did Clement and Janet, and she settled in the Houston, Texas area. We have relatives there, and I have tried to do some research and see if there is any pieces of art that are there that Frank's daughter had when she was living there. One of the intriguing vagaries of art world is the 40-year cycle which governs the popularity of an artist's school of painting. Most painters, good or bad, are shortly after their departure from the scene relegated to limbo for approximately that length of time, for 40 years. A great majority are blessedly forgotten, but those works are of the upper echelon in the quality are resurrected in one way or another. Franck Taylor Bowers is now deservingly emerging from the shadows, and we now are indebted to his family, specifically to Mr. and Mrs. Lawrence Bothwell of the town of Maine, for having preserved a nice cross-section of his work. Now, when they came up for auction, none of these works had ever been on the market before. They were all owned by the family. Many of them were on display at the house up the road here. And sadly, some of them were in portfolios that no one ever saw until the auction and they were distributed. The portrait of Clem is one of them. I found it between two pieces of cardboard, and with all the history of it, that it was Clement, painted by his brother. This one is not supposed to stand up, so it's laying down. And I thought, how sad that this wonderful portrait was never framed and hung somewhere in the house. But I found this frame at Mapes, who did the second auction for them, and it hangs in my living room now. It is a pastel, and as I said before, dates to about 1902, 1903, somewhere through there. The one closest to Tess is the first picture that I bought. And I bought it because of the memory that we had of Dr. Bowers. I don't know if that is him, but the first memory that we have, was him riding in the Memorial Day Parade on his horse Major. He had to be, I hate to say in his 70s because now I am almost there, but at least in his 70s, rode saddle seat English, and he had a long tail coat and a top hat. You remember it to be gray, correct? Yeah. We have a picture of Dr. Bowers, of our dad, and Earl Sutton down in front of the Maple Glen Farms at Walters, on horseback on Memorial Day, which I could not find. I know that, and maybe you or Tanya has it now, I'm not sure, but it's an 8x10 of the three horsemen on Memorial Day, and Diane reminded me this morning how excited our father was that Dr. Bowers was riding in the parade.
It took a lot of convincing, as I recall.
Okay.
He had tried for several years, I think.
To get him to go.
Yeah.
At one time, there were more horses than fire trucks in the parade, thanks to my dad. Unfortunately, that has dwindled. Maine Mavericks, which is the horse club that he and my mom and 10 other people started in our kitchen, celebrates its 60th anniversary this year. 60 years. And it's still going strong. It's now in Whitney Point, but my stepmama, Diane Lindeborn, is instrumental with the Maine Mavericks still. So anyway, the horse picture was the very first one that I bought. I'm going to jump to a couple of others that are over here. Everything that you see here are original works of art by Frank, except for the print that's hanging from the little table. I think one of these two was a print, but they're both horse related. What intrigued me about this one is the fence, and when we're done, come up and look closely. It's a laid up stone fence through a field. And then this one, there is a lady that she's either fallen off or gotten off her horse quickly in the middle of a field, and the title of it is Help, and that's it. And all of the guys are just standing there watching. So, let's see.
Yancey, did you acquire all these at auction?
Yeah, you did. Yep. I'll tell you a quick story about that. At that point in my life, I really didn't have very much money for extra. Do I ever have any extra money? But our mom and dad knew the importance of these pieces that were local pieces, and they loaned me their credit card and said, keep your hand up as long as you want to. And I did, and then I paid them back after that. I wish I had left my hand up longer on many of them, especially this collection over here, which I'll tell you about in a minute. This one is actually Lamont's brother, and I'll tell you in a second. Or Phil, you can help me. Charles. Yes. Charles, who was Lamont's older brother, he was born in 1838 and lived to 1918. Lamont, just to give you an idea, was born in 1847, and he lived until 1941. As I said, there were 8 children. I wish Larry were here so much for a lot of reasons, but one of the stories that I was told was with the big Bowers stone, no one is buried there. It is just a memorial to the family. When we did the walking tours 2 summers ago, was it, Sue?
Last year.
Was it last year? Whoever portrayed Gardner said, no, I am buried there. So I haven't been able to confirm yes or no. But the folklore that I had heard growing up was that it was just a monument and no one was there. If you want to go up to Floral Park, magnificent cemetery, you go in the side entrance off of Floral, it curves to the left and then circles up to the right. First big stones that you come to are the Robersons, which looks like a carved tree. It is spectacular. Go just on down around the corner. And this is the group of people that the Bowers were playing with at that time. Around the corner is Lamont's stone, which is bigger than the one down here. Clem and Janet are on the stone. And on the side, I'm sure that Jan is still rolling over. Her name and Larry's name are on the big stone in Floral Park, even though neither one of them is there. But and then just beyond them is Willis Sharp Kilmer of Kilmer Swamp Root. Remlick's restaurant was the Kilmer headquarters for their business. Who also owned the Binghamton Press, who started it because the owner of the other newspaper did a less than complimentary editorial on him and his business. And so he built the press, and it was a very short amount of time. Within a year, the other paper was gone. He had forced them out of business. So pretty ruthless. So anyway, this is Lamont's brother, which would be Clement's older uncle and Franck Taylor's uncle. For a period of time, Lamont ran an iron ore business and designed boats and anchors in Michigan, and this was done on Lake Michigan. Whoever has the book, there are some great pictures of people on the promenade of the boat in Lake Michigan. They apparently made their fortune with making or manufacturing anchors. If you look at the dates of all of these pictures, they were mostly done 1900 to maybe 1895 to 1906. The oil painting up here that we'll talk about in a few minutes, that is one of his later works. The reason there's a huge gap from about 1910, 1905, 6, 7, 8, 10, up till 1925, where there is no record of any artwork that he did because his father forced him to not study and run the family business. But this one is one that was from out in Lake Michigan. For a period of time, he owned a photographic studio where he specialized in portraits of children and pets. This is not a photograph. If you look at this, these are all little tiny parallel lines that make the shape. And but this was done in, I don't think this one is dated. He signed his work a couple of different ways. 3 different ways, I believe. Franck T. Bowers, just T. Bowers, or F.T. Bowers. So this one just says T. Bowers. You can look up in the book and see the exact date of that. These 2 are just small little thumbnail sketches, but the detail is incredible. A mop bucket with a broom and the letter L. No idea what the L stands for, why he would have done that. And then this one is of a Gibson girl, we'll say, 1895 to 1900. Hair up, big hat, and a long flowing skirt.
Wow.
We've already talked about this one, which is called Help. And this one, which is the one with the stone fence. And the rider is a lady riding side saddle. So I'm going to save this one for a minute because this one is probably my favorite painting or drawing. The one that is closest to my sister is called Breaking the Machine. And if you look closely, there are 3 gentlemen. And Diane, what does it say? It only takes seconds. Can you read it?
There was only an instant for action.
It was a political statement because of safety in the workplace. And if you look, the middle guy, his shirt is caught in the gears of the machine and he's being pulled in. And the third one is cutting him away and the other one's pulling him to keep him from being pulled into the machine. Now, the interesting thing about that one, Frank, I already told you, was a very gifted photographer. Every one of those, many of these pictures, he drew from a photograph that he had taken. Those 3 men are all Franck Taylor Bowers in different positions. And then he used them as models to put through. The one behind the flowers, and I don't know if you can see it or not, that one, I wasn't sure if I was going to tell you this part of it, but I will tell you. That one was the most expensive one that I ever bought. And I was in a bidding war at Mapes the night that he sold all of these. And it's of the town of Maine from the top hill, possibly Ketchumville, possibly East Maine. There's a church in the background, and it is called the Coming Storm. And you can see the storm coming over the mountain. And I can't say that any of these are my favorite. A certain one is my favorite. That definitely is one of them, though. The last grouping is these 4, which are originals, and the one hanging on the front of the stand, which is a print. Just a copy that I did from the book. There were either 10 or 12 that Jan had framed in this frame that hung up the staircase going up to the 2nd floor of the house here. And I was able to get 2 of them. These are the ones I should have left my hand up for. Because the set, and I have tried to get them since then on the secondary market, and to no avail. But in that portfolio where I found the picture of Clement Bowers, I found 2 more that were never framed. One of them is never finished. Whoever has the book, there are 2 of the balloon. Page 16 is a colored version, which I did not get, which went for almost $1,000 for the picture of the balloon, which is the blue background here. However, in that same portfolio is Clement. Which is on page 43, is the black and white version, which I think I paid $20 for 5 or 6 different paintings, this being one of them. This is the horse race, and it is not finished. As you see, it's not completed. I was telling Sandy earlier, the print that is down here, many of these have members of the family in the paintings. This is supposedly Lamont, the grandfather, or the father of Frank. This one, and one of the boys in that one was Clement. And if you look closely at the print that I made, and I made it specifically because of that, it is a composite of all of these. If you look in the background, the Ferris wheel is in the back. The horse race is to the left. The balloon is going up to the right. I can't remember where that is. You see it, the one in the print? Anyway, they are all represented in that one.
It's at the top.
And-
Where it's tippy top, right at the very top.
It's a balloon.
Yeah.
And the shadow with the little boy with the balloon, you only see the shadow, that was supposedly Clement also. All right, my favorite, if I do have a favorite, it is this one. This is Uncle Isaiah. Uncle Isaiah worked for the Bowers family. We aren't sure if he was out here in Maine or not. Point out a couple of pictures that are in the book of his family. There is, how many children in the picture?
3.
3 of them. And, but this is Uncle Isaiah. This won second prize in the Century competition, which was in 1902. And when you get to the book, there is a great picture of his family. Okay, to finish up is the portrait. There is the portrait, the painting that is on the wall here. That was a gift back to Historical Society from Yancey McGregor Bittinger. She was one of Jan's friends, and at the second auction, because these were all hanging somewhere in the house along with many, many other paintings and drawings all the way through. The other, in the book, there are a number of trees, which are what I remember as a kid going to the house and seeing them. There's one called Two Brothers, there's one at Buttermilk Falls. I could have handed this to you guys and you could have started looking on this side. But Nancy bought that and very graciously gave it back to our society. It's brothers and sisters, because there is one that is called the Two Brothers. It is 2 large trees. They are to the back of the book, if you want to look, if you want to see the oils. These were done after Frank came back from Europe, when However, he escaped from working for his father. He studied in Europe for quite some time, traveled for over a year, he and his wife, and these were done 1926, I believe, 28, up through 30. Unfortunately, he died very young. He had a very rare form of asthma, and Dr. Bowers, we already talked about, was a doctor of botany, and he was doing his doctorate apparently at that time. And for his thesis, he asked his brother, and his brother agreed, to draw all of the rhododendrons for the doctorate program at Cornell. And that is one of the regrets that I have. A huge, probably 50 drawings of the rhododendrons were sold to a guy in Binghamton, who ironically his last name was Moore also. And it is said that Franck finished the last drawings for the doctorate thesis in the hospital on his deathbed. So, all right, Vivian, refresh my memory just a minute. When Larry was on the board of the Bowers Foundation, when Janet died, and the foundation was, with Janet, was instrumental in building our museum here, and that's why the building is named in her honor, or her memory, whatever you want to say. She gave a sizable donation to Maine Memorial to build the new playground that's at the south end, across from the ice cream shop. And when she died, all of the members of the foundation were given a sizable amount of money, which was with the stipulation that they donate it to a charitable cause. Yes?
Right.
And Larry, after going through, and it had to be approved by the attorneys and the executor, etc. And the money that Larry received went to SUNY Binghamton to build a playground, which Viv and Larry's grandson, Caleb, was in school there.
There was special school there. My grandson's autistic. He's now 22, 23 years old. But Larry donated his sum to the playground that was being built for that school.
So she touched, even though she had no children, she touched a lot of kids' lives through different programs. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Yes?
Yancey, what brought them from Maine, from Main
Binghamton
Street,
to Maine.
Binghamton to here?
They were actually here first. Gardner Bowers, that was the Gardner Bowers house. Did not have the portico across the front. I was told by Warren McGregor that it was a ramshackled mess, as it was when you bought it, wasn't it? Oh, in a different way. But back in the day, Warren said that there were windows that were missing. You could see the light of day from the front of the house to the back of the house, and it was literally falling down. And I don't know if you guys know this or not. The living room, the long living room with the bay window, and the library on the other side, they used to be 2 rooms, each one of them. They were split right down the middle. I was very fortunate. I first got to know Jen and Larry when they moved back, and I was in college at the time, and they hired me to house sit for them because they were going back and forth. Was it Cambridge? Yes. They were both theological students, theology students, and they were going back and forth and had this to dispose of the house up there. So, but they didn't want to leave this one empty, and also they had Dr. Bowers' dogs. One golden retriever, which I can't remember his name, and then a Dalmatian named Spry, who was almost 20. So he was not. But he would circle you, and he would growl, and he was not a friendly dog at all. And Jim and I talked, and I said, Spry will let me feed him, but that's basically it. She said, leave him alone. Just feed him, and he'll circle you and leave him alone. She called back the first night to see how I was doing. And I had to push Spry off my lap to answer the question. It was an honor and a pleasure to know them. We ended up in Gourmet Club, as did Ken and Sandy, inadvertently. We were asked as a substitute, and we never left. I remember at the auction, one of the hardest things for me was seeing her grandmother's sterling silver auctioned off, which did not go very expensive, but the soup spoons were Victorian soup spoons that were these huge scoops that you put the soup in your mouth, and you either had to throw your head back or turn the spoon over to get the soup out of the silver. Different lifestyle than any of us would ever imagine. At the auction, there were things that were auctioned off that Jan didn't even know had existed, I was told. Up in the top of a cupboard, they had 2 sterling silver turkey covers. Big silver handle like you see in Downton Abbey. There were a pair of them, and I was told that she never had seen them. So, or at least they had never been used. One of my favorite things that was auctioned off was this old dog collar.
Whiskey's getting to you.
What's that? No, it isn't. I didn't have enough yet. Was this dog collar that had been her dog when she was a little kid, and they had saved it all these years. And if I remember right, and someone had to know the story, I want to say that it went for $85, $90 for this used leather collar. It was an amazing auction. I told you about Spry, the Dalmatian. I have a chair in my living room that I bought at that auction because I needed a chair to sit in, and I paid $5 for it because no one would bid on it. It was done in burgundy velvet, and it's a Victorian, just a finger back or corset back, but the handle, the arm on this side, totally gnawed because Spry had chewed, and that was the chair that I was sitting in with him when Janet called back. It was just an amazing, amazing auction. The other fun thing that I remember, Dave, the first one was done by a company down in Pennsylvania, Roan Auctions, which is where I bought the bookcase. When David did the last auction, she had quite a collection of political buttons. And it was a very casual auction. And we were all sitting, a number of us that were there. I know Nancy was there right beside me, but he's holding them up and talking about the political buttons. And I said, and if any of you know her, I said, and every one of them is a Republican. And not a single one was. She was a dyed-in-the-wool Democrat. And we had many, many wonderful confrontations together. Any other comments or questions?
You know, as a kid, we lived in Ketchumville, and we would drive through, and there was always a stop here on the corner. And I remember as a child, looking out the window, my father would stop before he'd make the turn, and I would look at that beautiful bay window with the colored glass in it, and I wondered who lived there. You know, they must be rich. And it was just always was so enchanted with the colored glass. And then one time when we stopped, Janet was out in the garden, her beautiful white hair piled up, and I was just so enchanted to get a glimpse of her, you know, yeah,
Sure.
yeah.
And there are two Janets. There's
Yes,
Janet
yeah,
Senior,
this was
Senior.
And
this
this
was
would be
senior,
senior.
yes.
and her name was Janet Whitney Taylor Bowers. She's connected to the Taylors. One of the portraits that I did not bring, which has a great story also, hung in the library at the house here, and it is of John Milton Taylor, which I just learned I went down to the cemetery this afternoon and took the picture of the gravestone. And I want to get to it so that I tell you it correctly. I believe it is that one. Gardner's son was John Milton Bowers, and his mother was the Taylor. And I still can't say her first name, Aja Taylor Bowers. That Taylor, they lived up next to Lee and Dorothy Ames, where Carl and Dixie lived, and their grandson or son is who built my house. And that's why it's the Baker Taylor house. We named our son Aaron Taylor, thinking that it was a family name on Linda's side. Turns out that it was her grandparents, her grandmother's kindergarten teacher. And so it had nothing to do with the family, but that's the year that we bought the house here that is the Taylor house. So it's pretty neat. Anyway, the portrait that I have is of John Milton Taylor, who would have been Mrs. Bowers' father. It was painted about 1824, 1825.
So I didn't realize there was stained glass in that bubble bay window at one time.
I didn't know there was.
I remember it
Yeah.
distinctly, yeah,
Yeah, because it wasn't there when we.
No.
yeah.
When I first started house sitting for them, there was a beautiful 7.5 to 8 foot grand piano that was in the bay window. Georgie Steck. I have no idea why I remember that, but neither one of them played. Neither Jan nor Larry. And Jan had bought it apparently for Larry because he wanted to learn to play, but never did. But
And the bay window was not original to
No.
the house either.
no, as a matter of fact, there was the wall.
Must have been a fireplace there at one time, I would think.
I wouldn't
Yeah,
be
and
surprised.
this wasn't stained glass inset. This
Oh,
was,
she might have had
oh,
hangings.
yes,
Oh, okay.
Gotcha.
right.
I remember in the side porch, the small panes that were going up the hill. She had a collection of shells that they had found in the attic and put in those openings.
Wow.
Very exciting.
Nice.
I'm sorry.
Oh, thank you so much for such a fine talk and of a very talented artist. I've seen artwork in my family, and I've been always told that this type of thing, I don't know if you would call it pencil, but it is extremely hard to do. And I feel like I've witnessed in person an Antiques Roadshow.
I think in the book they are mostly pen and ink, pencil, and they call it gouache.
Good.
My art teacher, friend Diane, taught me that word.
I have one question.
Yes.
Is there still a gourmet club?
No.
It
How many of
sounds
us-
very nice.
We had a great time. Janet was friends with Julia Childs, One of the things that I regret not buying at the auction is something I probably never would have used. I screwed up and did not buy a box of cookbooks that had recipes still with markers in them that she had given out to all of us, because the Gourmet Club, the host and hostess would set up the menu, pick the recipes, and hand them out. The first one that Linda and I were a part of was an English meal, and we made cream of mushroom soup. And I remember we were still in the apartment, and we said it would be much easier to get a can of Campbell's. But it really did turn out very, very well. It sauteed, sliced mushroom. And it was only the caps. The stems were in to flavor the broth, and then they were strained out and not used, and the heads were sliced and put back in.
Sounds good.
We had a great time. There were some awful times. There were some expensive times that because the way that it worked, the host and hostess would supply the crystal, the china, the silver, and the recipes and the liquor. Lots of wines, different wines. We got to try a lot of different ones from around the world. Rick and Gloria Comstock, we were both working at the store at the time, and we asked them to give us something simple because we both had to work that Saturday. Please give us something we can either make ahead of time or we were having a Japanese meal, which was the most expensive meal that we had ever done. And they gave us a course called shabu shabu, which was julienne cut meat you had to do just before, and par-cooked vegetables, and then in the middle of the table were what were supposed to be woks, but we used fondue pots, heated, and you cooked the meat and the vegetables with forks for each one. It was awful. It was awful. And so, not that I'm a vindictive person, but the next meal was at our house, and we had a presidential meal. It was when Ron Reagan was in the White House, Republican, my dad. Anyway, when he was in the White House, and everything that we had served there had been served in the White House. And Rick and Gloria ended up with the main course, which was a roast suckling pig, but because there was 22 of us at the dinner, he was this long, and he was so big that they had to cut his head off and cook it in Emerson, Virginia, his mom and dad's house, in their oven, and the actual pig cooked in the oven. It's what's now my house. And then they put it back on with a dowel down the and apples and cranberries and a garland of parsley to cover the night. But yes, the Gourmet Club was a lot of fun. I learned a lot. I still make many of the recipes from it.
Wow.
And not all of it was expensive. It was just all homemade. Everything was from scratch.
Oh, sure.
So, any other questions or comments about any of the Bowers that any of us can maybe answer? Please come up and take a look at these closely, because the detail in them is amazing. And it's all local. It's all local history.
Great.
Thank you so much.